Well, hello, that's me again. Today is Sunday. It is October 13th, 2024. And before I comment on what you see in the video in the beginning of this segment or of my video now, is I've been driving a lot yesterday. In fact, it's quite a lot. So I'm completely exhausted despite the fact that I get some sleep. So it's if you will not see the spark of energy in me, so yeah, it's probably because I'm tired. There's nothing wrong with just, in fact, it was a pleasant drive in the sense of what we saw and whom we communicated to, but obviously it was a long drive, I would say about, yeah, roughly speaking, almost 650 kilometers, which means I drove from the back and forth between, let's say, Moscow and St. Petersburg, one run. So it's not easy. So anyhow, but let's start with what you see in this video in the beginning. It is delivery of the one of the German Leopard tanks to the legendary Ural Vagon Zavod, which celebrated 2 days ago its 88th anniversary. What is important about Ural Vagon Zavod, which literally translates as Ural Rail Car Works. Well, those rail cars, which UZ, as it's known, produced throughout the years, are such rail cars, quote unquote, as T-34, T-72s, T-72s B3, T-90 Proriv, which is the, not arguably, it's not just arguably, it's the best tank in the world today. And so, well, they drag one of those German Leopards, or Leopards, if you wish, to study. And a number of them have been already delivered to all different places in Russia where it matters. And of course, they were burning really beautifully. And don't forget, Germans call those Leopards the best tanks in the world. And so I didn't go to build, which is of course tabloid, and actually we'll talk about this later. But look at this. Here's from the RT, which is the essentially recapping this whole story from build, no less. And as you can see yourself, this October 13th, it's no more German military hardware for Ukraine. Bild says it. According to the outlet, the German Defense Ministry does not believe that Ukraine will be capable of launching an offensive to liberate its own territory in the near future. Sure. And the report also said, citing an internal document, that Berlin would no longer send heavy weapons to Ukraine and that deliveries of this type of aid have been completed. The term applies to tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, armored personnel carriers, self-propelled howitzers, and similar hardware, which actually lost every single remnant of its reputation of German engineering, because it was paraded as absolutely not designed for the modern battlefield by those pesky Russians. And yeah, Leopard was one of those. You remember, it was between United Kingdom and Germany, like, oh yeah, we have Leopard 2, whatever the hell is the abbreviations follow after this, the best tank in the world. Then British come out, especially with those clowns who, commanded something tanks there. Remember that? And they say, no, it's Challenger 2. It's the best tank in the world. It will, sweep away, those Russian recruits who will run in horror once they see this, horrible tank, which will, it didn't last long, really. The moment it appeared on the battlefield, it was destroyed. And then another one destroyed, and then another, and then United Kingdom, London government issued the order to remove them from the front lines. Because, why do you need to lose your reputation, which already lost? Everybody understands that it is lost, but here we are. And this is not just the basically trying to, to conduct some sort of damage control. It cannot be damage controlled anymore. Everybody saw what all this expensive and allegedly sophisticated, which it is not. Over-engineer it doesn't mean that it's sophisticated. For some reason, people continue to use this stupid term like, oh yeah, it's sophisticated, so allegedly it should be good. No, I mean, Russians produce produce a lot of sophisticated weaponry. But the problem is, of course, as I already stated, the sophistication is not a measure of anything. It's just a measure of the complexity. But what is measure of the people, for example, who sit not just on the tactical, what is called higher tactical, because we need to really separate higher tactical, which is, for example, command of such, formations and staffs. In other words, the formations which do have own staffs. For example, battalion already has some staff. It's not the full-fledged staff, but already they have. Then you have the staffs of the, regiment, and then, of course, brigade level. That's higher tactical level because they have genuine staffs, especially brigades, and you have to conduct those. They cannot conduct independent operations, but they conduct a lot of tactical level, actions, if you wish. So that's the higher tactical level, and of course operational level. And they don't go by all this. Oh yeah, it is sophisticated. No, they don't use this thing at all. What they use is combat effectiveness, and the combat effectiveness of the NATO Western weapons in general is miserable. And it's miserable against the weapons which have been designed from the outset to be not so much expensive, although Russia produces some very expensive weapons, but they were designed to be effective, combat effective. They were designed to kill. And here, as I already, you can quote me, I'm ready to talk with anybody from NATO who would want to challenge this basically assertion that essentially NATO as a whole, including the United States, lost the arms race technologically because they were producing sophisticated, expensive weapons which were designed to be sold. And I've been on record for the many years now and wrote books, and you can go and read it there. However, when we look at this basically implosion of this whole, so to speak, reputation thing, you can see yourself, for example, also how one of the really great operators of the UAVs in Russia, as you can see yourself, it's for some reason very, very clear video picture, right? The reason it is clear because it is not being suppressed by the electronic warfare, which of course usually everybody uses electronic warfare, and you can see yourself in interruptions in the, for example, video feed or guidance by the operators of the UAVs, and you see the smothered picture and things of this nature because of the electronic warfare. And for example, Ukrainians on NATO tries to jam, Russians jam back, and things like that. So Russians said, okay, yeah, for the tactical level, lower tactical level, the battlefield of the formations of the platoon, squad, and even company, why don't we go back to the good old Russian ATGMs, which are, of course, wire guided. Let's stick the optical cable and guide those things, and guess what? It works like a charm, as you can see yourself. And this is what sophistication is. It's not sophistication; it's combat effectiveness. And guess what? As you can see yourself, the operator beautifully avoids the this truck, loaded with the electronic warfare things, and hits what really matters. And of course, it is the armor, it is the tank. So this is your tactics. It is lower level tactics, higher level tactics and operations. They don't care in a sense that how sophisticated you are. They only care about combat effectiveness and those critical operational coefficients which define the decision trees on the command level of the formations. This is not some story, as everybody loves it. Make no mistake, the Russians are not exceptions. It's like some guy from Team SEAL 6 or some dude from Frontline in Ukraine go out and say, yeah, what, we just split in 2 or 3, we turned on our infrared, and whatever things, and conducted this operation actions which is triumphant. That Hollywood would like to make movie about it, not about Russian operations, of course. Hollywood will never do that. But the point is, this is not how war is prosecuted in terms of the winning, because these are those boring guys, like me, much younger though, and who sit in those staffs and they run through all those monitors constantly, and they run and scream at each other. They, cuss non-stop up, in terms of how the information flows in, how the communications networks work. And so in the end, they make those critical decisions that you say, this company goes there. This is your objective. And nobody in this company asks why, because it is the order. But many people think that, yeah, the Hollywood version of war somehow is related. It's not. In fact, is they BS people for so long that those people do not understand what is this all about. For example, Soviet, especially World War II, Great Patriotic War movies, they give a much clearer picture, especially in terms of that you get killed, and sometimes in the most bizarre and most difficult way. So, but hey, what do I know? So, and then we go and start looking at what is happening and why suddenly, Germany, which is expecting the visit of Mr. Biden, I don't know what they're going to be talking about, specifically to Germany, Mr. Biden made sure that it's not going to be talking about the continuation of the support of Ukraine or the Rammstein group or whatever they wanted in terms of peace conference. So that pretty much tells you what you need to know. And so there were a number of the desperate, stupidest claims by number of the especially former Polish officials. And so now, obviously, Mr. Trump, you know what, he never falls back, in this type of things. And he says yesterday that Moscow, actually, you remember, he stated that Trump said that if he wins, that he will just basically finish this conflict, wrap it up in less than 24 hours. Of course, it's a complete BS designed for, for the fall on the ears of very militarily and geopolitically uneducated people, but they people buy it, so anyhow. But Mr. Medvedev, a former president of Russia, and obviously the secretary, basically deputy chair of the Russia Security Council, second man after Putin, by the way, he says that Moscow will have more of a say than Washington on how the conflict with Kyiv ends, the former Russian president has said. So Washington would be mistaken to believe that the Russia-Ukraine conflict will end on U.S. terms, deputy chair of the Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, has suggested, which is absolutely correct. Russians do not really even pay attention that much on those propositions and secret diplomatic maneuvering behind the scene in terms of the United States trying to extricate itself without complete loss of the face, which has already happened anyway. It's a fait accompli. And so U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson has argued also that giving Kyiv more taxpayer money would not necessarily should the Republican candidate Trump win the election, because he would end the conflict. So, well, yeah, it's all posturing. It is all typical PR BS, which is basically that's what the elections in the United States are about. And so Johnson, the speaker, says if President Trump wins, I believe that he actually can bring that conflict to a close. I really do. Well, I don't, and I've been on record for many months now since Trump declared that, oh yeah, I can close it. No, you can't. So, and commenting on Johnson's quote on Friday evening, Medvedev indicated that Putin might have a say in the matter. And what if Putin says not yet, Ukraine must capitulate and not join NATO, the former president and prime minister of Russia wrote on X, formerly Twitter. So they explained that, yeah, he asks a very simple, non-sophisticated question, specifically in terms of what if Russians say no? And Russians will say no. And Trump probably knows it. But then again, sadly, the U.S. elections are all reduced to the basically spouting and spewing all kinds of nonsense, which is supposed to convince people that, oh, United States is still great and all that. Well, in this case, I would suggest you to go to Dmitry Orlov's blog. It's a boosty, it's behind the paywall, but still, he gives a very accurate, actually, estimates of the U.S. economy. Yeah, it's not, these are not good numbers, believe me. So, but yeah, they're still gonna continue to BS people. And if you go and take a look today at the, for example, what is happening on the at the front line, It's October 13, as you can see yourself. Yet, yeah, we're going back above 2,100 of the KIAs, primarily of the military personnel of Ukraine and those NATO people. So, as you can see yourself, there is another 2 MLRS, which are have been defeated. So immediately after that, there were all kind of people like Radio Liberty, which is essentially the sewer propaganda arm of CIA. They issued the article that Russians are running out of MLRS. Yeah, sure. Russians also running out missiles. You remember, for 2.5 years now, Russia always runs out of everything. But yeah, you cannot fix those because they are, well, most of them that's dumb as a stump, and they don't know nothing but how to spew the propaganda which is given to them from the political intelligence and military top of the United States and NATO. But yeah, the science, yeah, even Germany, which is run by this sausage. Refuses now to deliver anything. But then, of course, we have this from our good friend Marat Khairulin. This is actually of the 11th. It's 2 days ago. But as you can see yourself, and especially when you look at those arrows, you begin to see those are many kilometers arrows now. They are not those still yet, gigantic arrows, but they are big enough arrows just to literally tear the whatever is left of the Ukrainian defenses in the area of Selidova and in the area of Kurachovka apart, basically. Yeah, it's just a slaughter there, and I'm sorry to say this, because obviously somebody who will accuse me that, oh, I enjoy this. No, I don't. I understand people are being killed there in tremendous numbers. No numbers NATO ever experienced. They don't understand that. They have no reference points, and so, but here we are, and this is just one of the part of the front. Russians are also, they were just, again, semi, half-assed attempt of the Ukrainian, that you have to call it NATO, because that's what they are, NATO proxies. Attempt on Kursk, it was beaten back, Russians closing that cauldron there. So it's actually not closing. That's what many people have to understand. You literally have, as I already stated a number of times, you have the sporadic, which is the spotted pieces of the, so to speak, festoons of fortresses of defense by Ukrainians, most of them hiding behind the civilians. And yeah, they take civilians, they call them POWs. That is why those morons and, basically human trash from Western media continues to repeat that somehow there are POWs in thousands. No, those are not POWs. What in terms of the number of the POWs, they got about maybe 100 at best of Russian troops, primarily border guards, in the beginning of this suicidal mission. But it's the August 6th. But most of those people are civilians. They execute children, they rape women, they hide behind the basically backs of the civilians. This is what they do. And guess what? Today, even New York Times, I didn't read this article yet. I will find. I am subscribed to New York Times, but just don't quote me on this yet. But evidently, even New York Times cannot hide this anymore. Israeli so-called defense force have been accused of execution of children. No, we are talking preteen children. So, and that means what? 13 and lower, and there are x-rays now which show execution style. They just execute Palestinian children. I wonder where those ideas are rotate in, especially calling this basically genocidal force, which is IDF in United States, which have been applauding them as one of the greatest armies in the world, which it is not, it never was. I don't know. But that you have to keep this in mind. This is a pattern. This is modus operandi of the most of them. British, Poles have been known to rape and actually cut head off of some Russian women in Kursk area. So that's pretty much tells you everything you need to know about this. And as I already stated, I spoke about this and I directed you towards my good acquaintance, Russian economist and analyst Alexander Rogers, when he writes about the metaphysics of war. These are behavior of the inferior people. They know they're not that good over soldiers. They know their armies actually suck. They saw the real war. And guess what? As any people read his piece, especially Alexander Rogers using Google, about their inability to lose. They cannot lose as proper as humans. And because of that, they begin to throw the tantrum. Throwing the tantrum is what? Killing civilians. This is what they do really well. This is how they, well, you know what, as many people stated before, and I will only repeat, especially the evidence of as narrated by many American Vietnam veterans, which many of them were, of course, courageous and decent people, make no mistake. Not all of them were genocidal maniacs. But, for example, Vietnam was atrocity fest. And all people remember My Lai. There were many My Lais like this. There were whole villages executed, raped. I mean, just, yeah, that's what they do. This is, well, that's frustration when you understand you cannot win, because they can't, because they do not know how to properly fight that type of the fight. And it is obviously the cultural thing. And the cultural thing, that's what NATO has become. And Israel is the outgrowth of NATO, and in many respects. So if you think so that I am kind of confabulating this, you are free to go out and buy those books on Amazon. But in terms of the execution of the Palestinian children, you have to take a look at the New York Times. I didn't have the chance yet to go over it. If I am retelling it from other secondary sources, I think so, though it is in the New York Times. But don't quote me on this yet, specifically about Palestine and about execution of children, underage children. This is everything you need to know. This is pure evil, pure and simple. So, but United States being essentially not having any kind of the international subjectivity on the foreign policy and being run by the Zionists, we have now this news from New York Times, by the way, which, well, it's all over the place, that U.S. is to deploy missile defense system and about 100 troops to Israel, as you can see in itself, October 13. So, and the Pentagon announced it would send the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Battery and its crew as Israel considers retaliatory attacks against Iran. So they announced this on Sunday. And what is this third thing? Well, here's the thought of this third thing. Keep in mind, if you take a look at all those U.S. and even Israeli air defense systems, you will see yourself, they have to be angled, they have to be trained in angle and elevation to meet the target. That tells you a lot about the sophistication. That tells you that it already loses tactically on some very critical matters, such as, of course, reaction time. But, you know, for people who just look at those explosions, you know, and the flares from the engines, it looks cool. So then they don't care. But the reality is, of course, that THAAD is no different really much from all those Arrow 3 or the heads, which is pretty much have the same genesis, if you wish. And yeah, it has a range of about 150 kilometers and the altitude, and the range of about 200 kilometers. So it's essentially a variation of some type of the S-300V4, but much inferior, and it only designed on basically dealing with the classic ballistic missiles. It cannot do anything in terms of the maneuvering weapons, which, for example, as Iran demonstrated on the 3rd, I believe, of this month, when it really basically, you know, just insulted Israeli air defense. Let's put it this way. I'm not going to be using sexual terms to describe it. So, and yeah, and again, Iran wasn't even launching the their best and fastest. Some of them, Fateh, I believe, that was one of them. So, and they think that if they bring one battery of thought, it's going to change the outcome. It's not going to change anything. But it is, of course, just do something, demonstration. It is always was about PR. And we know how the Western air defense fares in the real combat zone. It's a disastrous. No, it still gets something, make no mistake. I believe Patriot shot down a couple of Russian planes. So they also brought down the IL-76 with basically what amounts to the POWs returning to Ukraine, and they knew where it will be flying. And yeah, the Americans, because they manned those things, they had no problems. Just they shut it down. Period. So, but of course, it was immediately caught up in the next 48 hours and annihilated. And I demonstrated to you many times what they are. So basically, if you take a look at this famous quote. Now famous quote by Mr. Lieutenant General Semyonov, the first deputy commander of the Russian airspace forces, when he says that Patriot PAC-3 cannot defend itself, forget about defending anything else. The same basically applies to most of those missiles. And when we have now the Mr. Sikorsky, coming out a couple of days ago, the foreign minister of Poland, he's a fanatical Russophobe and not mentally, normal person. That's what happens when your wife is an Applebaum, which are basically live in this delusion, this, fake world they created for themselves. He suddenly says that, oh yeah, this Aegis Ashore is against Russian missiles. Wow, color me surprised. In related news, actually, water is wet, the concrete is hard, and the fire is hot. I mean, you remember famous Putin's laugh at that. So, and what can I say? Russians do not really view this seriously anymore because these are obsolete systems designed to fight legacy ballistic missiles. They are out of the contention for the modern technological paradigm in delivery systems, in which United States is, and the rest of NATO is not even in the same league. They do not understand how to fight real hypersonic targets. Even against maneuverable Mach 6 at the burnout Iskander, they have no idea how to intercept Kinzhals, and of course they will have nothing against trying to shoot down 3M22 Zircon, let alone strategic avant-garde, and let alone the latest ballistic missiles of Russia, and especially the RS-28 Sarmat, which is the most energy armed, so to speak, energy capable missile in history. So yeah, it's just, sure, let them actually put it into Israel's territory and see what happens if they want to attack Iran. But don't forget, Iran in this case will have actually the early warning by Russians. That makes a huge difference. But in conclusion today, so in order not to take your attention that much, what can I say? Important. I really have to say this is important. And we have this article, which is really by Fikret Akfirat from the I Didn't Leak newspaper. And he talks about, obviously, the BRICS summit, which is huge. It's a historic event, and everybody understands that. And he talks about Erdogan, and he talks about the role of Turkey. And the 16th leader summit of BRICS will be held on October 22-24 in Kazan, the capital of the Republic of Tatarstan of the Russian Federation. The meeting is important in terms of holding it under conditions where the contradictions between the Atlantic Front and the developing world countries on the axis of Ukraine and Israel are intensifying. I don't think so China or Russia are developing world. They are actually first world countries with the first world immense, let alone Chinese, which is just gigantic monster of the economy. So, and he talks about that Putin's foreign policy advisor Yuri Ushakov stated that the heads of state of 24 countries will attend the summit. So they're obviously, yeah, as you can see, so Mr. Xi, Comrade Xi Jinping, Lula, Iranian president, And of course, there will be President Tayyip Erdogan. And he announced that he will be there. And he is, barring any surprise development in the last minute, Erdogan is expected to attend the summit and hold bilateral meetings with the leaders of Russia, China, India, and other countries. But here he is asking very good questions, really great questions. This is what real journalists have to do. Is BRICS membership a trump card or a target against the West? In terms of movements of Ankara and Erdogan, what does Ankara expect from this BRICS meeting, which is the most concrete partnership in the search of the alternative global order? The question is, will Turkey be one of the pioneers of this alternative global order, or will it continue to use its participation in organizations such as BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization as a leverage to recalibrate its relations with the Atlantic as it has done so far? And he mentions here, statements from Ankara give mixed messages on the issue. Equalizing BRICS and ASEAN, absolutely, which have different main starting points. Erdogan said BRICS and ASEAN are structures that contain opportunities for us. So, and look at this. Here is his wonderful conclusion, which he makes absolutely correct. Not only the statements made, but also the zigzags in Ankara's relations with the United States, Russia, China, and other countries create serious hesitation among the BRICS countries. On the other hand, it can be said that the policy of not pushing Turkey into the lap of Atlantic will prevail in the BRICS countries. And epilogue. As he said, conclusion. It seems that the BRICS summit will be an important turning point in terms of shaping the future of the world as well as for Turkey. And this is a beautifully defined and beautifully written piece, and give the credit where the credit due for the strategic thinking about all that. But yeah, he is absolutely correct. Erdogan is obviously very multi-vector guy, the guy who wants to sit on many chairs simultaneously. But after Kazan, I don't think so. There will be opportunity for him, or possibility even, to use BRICS membership as the trump card against the Atlanticism, because he will have to make a choice. He will not be, pressed by somebody to make a choice. He will be pressed by the flow and the power of the circumstances to finally figure out where Turkey belongs, especially considering the fact that, his trans-Turkish, if you wish, union, as they try to push it, is not going to materialize. There's a lot of things which they do. There are a lot of things which they push from Ankara in terms of unify all those Turkic people. But reality is, BRICS summit, huge. And what can I say? And this is what I wanted to finish off today with this whole situation for you guys. And as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford it, please support me on the Patreon or buy me a coffee too. Have the nice rest of your weekend. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.